So from this paper, many things started happening in the late 80s and early 90s. Many processes started coming about. We had Scrum begin to get formed by Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber, Extreme Programming from Kent Beck, Crystal Clear from Alistair Coburn, and many other of these processes started to formulate in the late 90s. And then in 2000, all of these thought leaders got together and said, we're trying to accomplish a lot of the same things, just a little bit differently. And a lot of what we're doing has some of the same core values. And they got together and they came up with the Agile Manifesto, which is a list of 4 values and 12 principles. These values are as follows. Individuals and interactions over process and tools. So what the Agile Manifesto means is that we value individuals and interactions more than process and tools. But process and tools still have their place. What we don't want to have is where process and tools prevent us from talking to each other, from talking to a person and interacting with them, where there might be a process where you have to fill out this form before you can get this type of information. You have to go through this person before you can talk to this person. Or you have to enter this into this tool and track it this way. All of those things started to actually prevent us from talking to people and actually interacting with a person. The next value was working software over comprehensive documentation. Now notice, it doesn't say documentation period. Documentation still has its place, but we want to make sure that we are concentrating on actually producing working software rather than reams of documents that describe the software. The next value, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Now I've been a consultant for a long time, so contract negotiation is often very important to us. But there have been times where we stick to that contract no matter what, and the customer does not get what they need at the end because things change and we are afraid to change the contract. If the customer changes, the market changes, their needs changes, the technology changes, we must be able to react to that. But if we're locked into some type of contract and we actually make it detrimental to change the contract, the customer may not get, in the end, what they expect. And part and parcel with that is responding to change over following a plan. We have to have a plan, of course, but no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So as soon as we run into some impediment or something that takes longer, that plan is going to have to change. And we need to respond to that change. We know it's going to happen. So having a process and a culture that will actually react elegantly to that change is going to be more conducive to an agile methodology than an actual waterfall methodology. Now I like to think of the Agile Manifesto as a mixing board. When you're mixing a good band, often you're changing things around depending on the sound, how many people are in the room, the type of song, and you want to get that perfect mix where everything's sounding great. So if you think of the Agile Manifesto, a lot of purists might say, well, we want to push everything to 11, and we want pure Agile. And that's often not practical. Let's take individuals and interactions, for instance. If we have a large team spread out over multiple locations and multiple time zones, then it's going to be hard to have face-to-face interactions, because not only are they not located with us, they may be sleeping while we're working and vice versa. So we might have to implement some type of process for transitioning information back and forth. We might have to use some tools like email. We might have to use Skype. So we have to pull that slider down a little bit. We have to go a little bit over to process and tools just to make that work. Customer collaboration. As I said, I've been a consultant, and not often will they let me come in and say, trust me, if you give me lots of money and plenty of time to do it, I'll get something out for you. We have to have some contract in there for both parties to be comfortable. So we may have to actually slide this down more towards contract negotiation, since we have to have some type of contract in place for this engagement. We might not need it for the next engagement. We might not need it for the next engagement with this client. Things change, and so our adoption of these values may change. And we want to try to always be going towards the values of Agile if we want to be an Agile shop, but we have to be realistic and practical about those adoptions. There are also 12 principles with the Agile Manifesto. I'm not going to go through all of these, but often people concentrate on the main 4 values, but these principles are very important as well, meaning they're talking about working software as the primary measure of progress, where a lot of times we're more worried about having 40 hours. They also talk about business people and developers must work together daily, where often we are separating business and having them convey information through documents. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. So instead of building these large, all-encompassing frameworks, build the simplest thing that'll work. And there's much more in here that I encourage you to check out.